Good morning, everybody. My name's Imani Scruggs, and I'm here with Rob Isner, and we're from Cuyahoga County Extension through 4-H, and we are here for our weekly five questions about race. So I will let Rob get started.
Good morning. This is Rob Isner. A couple housekeeping things that we talked about we wanted to do from last week. First, when you the video's not posted yet, we're working on that. But when you see it, there's one section where I edit the sound, and so as a rule, we don't want to edit these. We want to be well, we want the ability to, but we kind of want to just be frank and honest. And half the time, I don't even know what I'm saying when I watch the video, the recording of it. I'm like, oh. Because this can be kind of intensive. That's kind of what we want it to be, fun as well. But we also don't want to out anybody in particular. And so I was telling a story about a family member sending racist emails, and I identified them by name. And I don't want to, that's not the point of this. The point of this isn't to embarrass specific individuals or call out specific behavior. It's more to be productive and positive. So I just deleted that person's name. And then a second thing, Imani paid me a nice compliment. I was talking about how some of the black kids I work with like to feel my hair and arm hair and stuff, that it's kind of unique to them. And he paid me a nice compliment that they had a comfort level with me that maybe they didn't have with their teachers. And I didn't stand up for my teachers, so I want to give a shout out. My teachers are amazing. They spend every day, 5 days a week with these kids, and their job is much harder than mine, and they do have great relationships with their kids. So since I didn't stand up for them last week, I wanted to be sure and do that today. Anything you wanted to talk about from last week before we start, Imani?
No, off the top of my head, I think I'm all good.
Okay. So my first question is, today is June 17th, and Friday is June 19th or Juneteenth. And it's something I wasn't really aware of growing up, and just the past few years I've heard about it. And so for me, there's holidays where I hang the flag out, Memorial Day, Labor Day. So I'm starting to hang my flag. I know they've got a specific flag for Juneteenth, but I put out my American flag on Juneteenth. But just from your perspective, did the holiday have significance for you growing up, and how do you celebrate it now? And do you think it's a holiday that should be shared with all races in America?
You're so good at these questions. So to answer your question, sorry we had a little break up there. I didn't learn about Juneteenth until I was probably in my 20s, embarrassingly enough. I probably had heard about it, but didn't recognize its significance. And Juneteenth, for people that don't know, is the day that's celebrated as like the day that slaves actually got freed, like completely. So the Emancipation Proclamation happened a couple of years prior. And to be honest, I don't know if there was this is another thing, like I don't totally know. I know it's the symbolic day the symbolic day that the slaves got freed, but I'm not sure if there was like a certain law that got signed into place on that date, or if the last slave was actually like freed on that date. I'm not sure what it actually symbolizes. I just know that's the day that African Americans, and to answer the second part of your question, like everyone should choose to celebrate the freedom of blacks in this country, quote unquote freedom. But yeah, it wasn't a big part, like a big holiday for me growing up, and even today, or like now in my life, I don't have anything planned to celebrate. I was gonna be on a Zoom call with a couple of friends that I was in this program with in high school, and we were gonna kind of celebrate together, but we had to push it back a week. So yeah, I think it's something important to be recognized in this country, and more people should like celebrate the holiday, because this country hasn't reckoned with its history of like slavery enough by any means. And I think we need to highlight that in a lot of ways, more like we don't learn enough about in school or anything like that. And like you said, I'm sure you can answer this after I'm done with my answer. Like when you first learned about it, but I would assume that most kids, probably between like 60 and 80% of like any race, haven't heard about it or don't hear about it in school. So yeah, that's something that should be made a bit more prominent And then I know for the first time in a while, like it's becoming part of the like collective conversation in our country. So it's good that the awareness has been raised in light of recent events. So I hope in a roundabout that way that answered it.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot.
It's a good
had
question.
the benefit of, I was on the Mental Floss website, just fun site to visit if you're bored, random information. But they did, I don't know, 8 facts, however many facts about Juneteenth. So I was reading about it. And it actually was first recognized by the state of Texas, surprisingly. In 1980, they made it a state holiday, but what it was, after the Civil War had ended, because there were no, internet, or a lot of these places were very rural, blacks didn't have access to information. So a lot of slave owners didn't tell the slaves that they were free, and kept exploiting their labor. They wanted to get like one more harvest out of it. And so June 19th is a day that some general came in and read a proclamation. I don't know what, it may have been Houston, I'm not positive, but basically saying you're free. And they actually encouraged slaves to stay with their owners and work for pay. But I guess there was a lot of people started scattering even before he was finished reading the announcement about it.
Yeah, so, hard to blame him.
Yeah, and then a lot of negativity ensued, but it was overall positive. So I like the framing of that. It's our true Independence Day. That the 4th of July is the day we declared our independence, but Juneteenth is the day we achieved our independence.
I've never heard that. That's good.
I just came up with that on my own. So, so I'd like to now try and rename independent. People don't even call it. People think, what are you doing for the 4th? It's the 4th of July. People don't think of it as Independence Day.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see it kind of framed as Declaration Day, and Juneteenth remain Juneteenth and be our Independence Day. I think we need a holiday that can unify us, so we can share together.
Wow. I really like that. That's a cool idea. Seriously, that's good.
Thanks.
All right. You put my questions to shame, man. Now I'm having to think which one I want to ask next. I'll just go in my order. So going back to our independence and our initial Bill of Rights and all that, what do you think white people's fascination with guns are? They just I recently actually became I don't know if I should be saying this on the video. I guess it's legal, so it doesn't matter. I became a gun owner myself. And the whole gun culture in America is obviously very deeply entrenched. And I'm curious how it involved, and that's not necessarily my question, is how it or evolved, not involved. But yeah, what do you think white people's fascination with guns are? There's a whole culture around it, and it's always kind of taken me a little bit by surprise. I'm not really sure what all the hype's about.
That's a real good question. That reminds me, I wanted to say at the beginning of this video, we're going to put a disclaimer up, but obviously Imani and I work for Ohio State University, but this is our personal opinions. And so we're not speaking on behalf of Ohio State or for Ohio State, or representing their views specifically. I think, like a lot of things, the gun piece of our culture gets overblown and gets all the attention. If you look at polling, a very strong majority of people want kind of more safeguards put in place around gun ownership, aren't in that we have to have guns kind of mentality. It probably goes best to just kind of they've been glorified ever since the founding of the country, going back to muskets to westerns and shoot 'em up. That's about the only thing I can attribute it to. I have a little shotgun that I use because I've got chickens and some coyotes, predators, and stuff will come around from time to time. Tell you the truth, I haven't really shot anything with it.
I was going to add, that was going to be my next question.
I scare stuff away. And it's fun to shoot. I go back on my property and shoot at stuff. But also ammunition. Guns are very expensive. That's one thing I don't get is how people afford even a simple gun. And I hate shooting it because every time I shoot, I'm like, well, there goes $1 or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's bigger in the South with the gun racks and the trucks and stuff. I think it's a way people who are marginalized feel some control over their lives. Here's why I pointed out we don't speak for Ohio State. I'll get in big trouble for that. When I say this, it's going to freak people out, maybe some people, but it's not that big a deal. I think moving forward, we shouldn't try and change the Second Amendment. I think we should repeal it, because repealing the second, I don't think you're going to craft a good gun amendment that makes everybody happy. It's too vague.
Yeah.
But the way the Constitution reads, we can have anything we want. I think it's one of the worst written parts of the Constitution, the Second Amendment, because it was so broad. I get why it's in there, and I don't mind that people have guns. But if it's repealed, then that gives cities, states, the feds, anybody the ability to then pass laws in an easier way to regulate them the way the population of those areas want to.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even recommend the federal government do anything. I would just say,
let the states choose.
They're not constitutionally protected anymore. That doesn't mean you can't have them. And then I think that would lead to more rational gun ownership. But boy, bring that up and
that's not gonna. There's a 0% chance that happens.
Because people don't think it through. They hear that as ban all guns.
Yeah.
Which repealing the Second Amendment would not ban a single gun. But yeah, that's not.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck with that one.
I know. I even posted that on a more left-leaning site that I visit, and I got shot down there too. So nobody wants to hear that. Next question. How can last time you asked me how, what I think white people could do to help, and really I fumble with an answer and I don't know, and you probably don't either, but suppose just two people work in retail together, at a grocery store or wherever, and it's a white person and they have a black coworker. They're not really friends, but the white person just wants to offer some kind of moral support, or just let the black person know, I'm on your side. It's okay. What's the best way they could do that, or is there, like, what works for you as far as white people, maybe you don't know so well, offering support versus what do you think is kind of strange?
There's definitely not a once, as is the case for pretty much any of our answers, but there's definitely not like a one size fits all there. That's gonna differ from person to person what their personality is. I'm very open, and there's not very many things that offend me. So like, I'm fine. I've had, in the midst of all this, I've had several white friends reach out, just being like, hey, hate seeing what's going on, here to offer our support. Let me know any way I can help. And like, that's beautiful, because it's not forcing me into anything or forcing me to have a conversation. They're not like, hey, I want to know how you feel. Are you mad about this? Are you angry about this? They're just like, hey, offer my support. I'm an ear to talk to if you need it. And I think that's not only a good way to approach like black people, like a black coworker, like whatever during those times, is just like an open way, but pretty much anyone in those situations. So I also had a very close friend die 2 weekends ago. And people reached out in kind of a similar light, like, hey, sorry for your loss. Just let me know however I can help. And again, like, it puts the ball in your court. If I want to reach out and get some support, I know I have that in that person. But if I also just want to kind of cope and deal with things on my own, I'm also welcome to do that. They're not forcing me to talk about it or forcing me to have a conversation. So to answer the second part of your question, what's like a strange way to do that is like, don't be intrusive and asking a lot of questions and like forcing that black person to almost like pander to your needs and your curiosity about the situation. It's about them, and just like let them know you're a like open ear to talk to if they need it, and yeah, just offer your support basically. Have you ever had any heroes in your life that were non-white or people of color? And that can mean like role models, mentors, actual superheroes that you looked up to, like anything like that.
My hero sports idol growing up was, and still is, although he passed away, Willie Stargell. When we were born, like first few years of my life, we were in the Panhandle of West Virginia, just a few hours below Pittsburgh, and this was I was born in '64, so '71 they won the World Series, and Clemente
Yeah.
too. Clemente's like iconic.
Yeah.
He was my brother's favorite, but I was always drawn to Willie Stargell. I loved his windmill warm up swing, and he's the only person I've ever had a poster of.
Wow.
So I had a poster of him on my bed. I even took it to college with me. Okay. I hesitate to call these videos this because it's, well, you'll see why. But every week or two, we'll get a video posted of a Karen, or sometimes I hear them called Marthas, and that's why I feel bad for people named Karen or Martha. But
yeah, right.
Basically, a white woman usually who has an issue with something that a black person's doing, and they confront it, and it gets taped, and then their career gets ruined.
Yeah.
Lather, rinse, repeat. So how do you feel when you see the Martha videos, and has that ever happened to you? Has somebody ever tried to come up and correct something you were doing in a kind of insulting way?
Huh. Okay. Yeah, when I see the videos, they're interesting. So it's nice to see stuff like that. That is one thing I do love about this, like, social media, information age, all that, is that people can get recorded and called out for their BS now, whereas before those people weren't getting exposed. But negative part of that, so I think one you're probably referencing is like a couple weeks ago that happened to someone in a park when he was asking some woman to like leash her dog or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he was a bird watcher.
Yeah. And she called the police, and that lady ended up losing her job. She lost the dog, and now I won't say her life is ruined, but like her name will forever be associated whenever like any employer or like future partner she has or whatever Googles her, it's going to be like angry white racist woman, blah, 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 whatever. So over something that was like a racist act, which she should in some sense have been reprimanded for, but like, I don't know if her life should have been ruined over it. And the man who it happened to came out later and said the exact same thing. He's like, I don't know if it was, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, I don't know if it was like that serious to have her like lose her job and all this stuff over. So I'm caught there. It is beautiful to see those people suffer repercussions, but there's levels to it. I don't think that was the most like egregious thing in the world. It was wrong, but like for your life to be ruined, that's kind of tough. And so you asked what my reaction was, and then what if that's ever happened to me. One time I was in a Barnes and Noble, and she was kind of joking but kind of serious. But when you asked that, this story stuck out in my mind. So I don't know if it's a perfect example, but I'll say it. I was in a Barnes and Noble, like up grabbing like a drink or a scone or something at their little front counter. And this was right after Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown. I know those happened relatively close to each other, which I think it was Trayvon Martin. It was the hoodie one. And I had it's appropriate, actually, I have a hoodie on side of my hood up in the store. And the lady came up to me and she's like, and she said it kind of joking, but super inappropriate. She's like, hey, you better be careful walking around with your hood up like that. I was like, what? And then she kind of just sort of like laughed it off and like walked away. And like, I was probably in high school. I was sort of like shocked and didn't know how to respond to it. So she just walked away, and like, that was that. But that's one of those situations that you would have liked for someone else to have been around and like seen it. And since I was so uncomfortable in the moment, like someone else that have called them out for it. But yes, like something of the sort like that has happened to me. I'm sure there's other examples that aren't coming right to mind right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun. It's almost entertaining to watch somebody get what's coming to them, but then it does. So yeah, I think it's good to expose. Sometimes we get too carried away with the pile-on of. But what I also think is how many times and I think this is the sad thing to me about the violence that Blacks experience, this is what we've seen on film, but this has been going on, since the start of our country, and how many gruesome incidents and things have occurred that have never been caught on film, and Blacks for years have said this is happening and just been ignored. that's the hard thing for me to wrap my head around it and think about. So
yeah, so when you think about it in that context, and like I do a lot of the times, that makes you not feel as bad for those few people whose lives are ruined now because they chose to be clowns in a like situation and they suffer from it. 4,000, 40,000 fold, those many lives have been like ruined for Black people because of those incidents, right, and like never been reported. So yeah, the scale still heavily tips towards white people there. So yeah, it is what it is, I guess, at the end of the day. Okay. This it's kind of a loaded question, but like this is loaded is the wrong word, and this is a weird question. But when I was thinking of like our original like subject matter idea for this whole thing of just asking things you're curious about, like white people, why do white people let their pets kiss them in the mouths all the time? And do you guys let your pets kiss?
We have 2 dogs, and my wife and son both freak out. The puppy is in a licking, chewing up flip-flop stage. First of all, we've had 10 pairs of flip-flops destroyed this week. But she'll come up and just lick. She licks your leg. She'll lick anything. And it freaks my wife out and my son. They can't stand it. I don't mind it as much, but I don't let her do it because I don't want her thinking that's okay. You know, she's a puppy. She needs to learn. Mouth is kind of gross. So I don't. My daughter doesn't care about any of it. She'll, get the puppy right in her face. So it's selective. Not all white people like it.
Yeah, I figured.
But I don't mind. And I think the chickens are very dirty things to have around too. So the way I see it is I'm exposing myself to lots of germs and stuff, and I think that's going to help me in the long run avoid, hopefully, knock on wood.
Build that immune system up.
Yeah, I have resistance. That's what I tell myself anyway when I'm breathing chicken dust. But no, I don't have a good answer for you.
Fair enough.
I get it though. This, not more serious, but more something you have to think about a little more. We're always kind of floating in and out of words. I think that's just part of the growth of language. But so, for example, African American, like for a long time, I was afraid to call a black person black.
Yeah.
But now it seems like African American's over the top. And then you think of Africa, you don't say European American, you say Italian American or Irish American. Or whatever. Mm-hmm. We do say Asian American, so we blend those countries. But I think that's because Americans don't have a great grasp of geography. But what's your thoughts on the term African American? And then Africa is a continent with lots of diverse countries. And so which kind of African country, if any, do you most identify with?
Okay. It's an interesting two-parter. Yeah, I don't really use the term African American much myself. I use black and prefer for people to use black. And I was talking to my girlfriend before, and she's like, a lot of like Black Caribbean people, I won't say take offense, but kind of like feel some type of way about the term African American. They're like, we're not historically from Africa, so like that's incorrect when you call us African American. So that made me think about like really being more conscious about just using the term Black when you're referring to all Black people, because you don't know if they're actually if their people originate from Africa or not. So yeah, I definitely use the term Black, and I get why people use African American, because to be honest, those people usually are trying to be a little more politically correct, which is like, it's fine, thanks, I guess. But you're right, it does come off as a little over the top sometimes. And as far as what country I identify with the most, I wouldn't say any, unfortunately. Like I do not know the history of Africa in the way I should. There was a podcast, me and my like podcasts. There's a podcast I was about to listen to the other day called 1619, and it was about the first, I think like 20 Africans that were brought over here as slaves to the US. And I listened to the first, they had like a little trailer or whatever. I listened to the first 2 minutes of it, and it like tore my soul up too much. And so I couldn't listen to the rest, which is horrible. So like, I do not know the history of the continent to the extent that I should. So I don't know if I identify with any particular country, to be honest with you.
And the reason, because that's even like a leading question for me to assume that there might be one. But what made me think of it is last time off camera, didn't you mention that your father had visited?
Yeah, he went
somewhere?
to Ghana.
Okay.
And he actually saw some of the coastal, like where they kept the slaves. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week too, but like the, I don't know if they're jails, but like the holding cells or whatever, where they kept the slaves before they were shipped over. And like, obviously that was a very impactful event for him. And like, I want to experience that too, eventually, just because like how that would be so surreal. But the only country I've been to in Africa is actually Egypt, which is much more of a Middle Eastern culture than it is an African culture. So like, to be honest, I barely even, it is part of Africa, obviously, but I don't really count that as me going to like sub-Saharan or like Western Africa. So yeah, I don't think I identify with any of the countries personally there. And like, I'm not the type of person, I know some Black people want to do like a 23andMe kind of thing to see where they like originate from in Africa. But like, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference. But like, I will eventually go to somewhere in like Western or sub-Saharan Africa and learn a little bit more about the culture, because that's something that I think all Black people should do, like teaching kids more about, in schools, more about their histories. It was a teacher saying that I don't tell my students that like Black history started here in America. Like, it didn't start when we came over from the slave ships. Like, Black people very like rich history as kings and queens in their own like countries, in their own villages, whatever. That's like never taught over here. So Black people don't grow up with this sense of like royalty or like importance or meaning in their history. They just know themselves like historically as slaves here, but we were so much more than that back when we were in Africa. So it's important to teach like young Black kids their like full history rather than just their American history. You don't take me as someone that was ever into this, so this may be a tough question to ask. And again, it's broad. I know it differs from person to person, but why do you think it's so difficult for white people to understand why they shouldn't use the N-word? And what do you think their like fascination with its continued use is?
I don't know that I would say I observed that. And I have not, it's something I don't hear. Maybe that, hopefully that's good news to you. I can't even think of the last time I heard it from a white person. I hear it in the schools and stuff with the kids.
Yeah, of course.
I hope I know enough to like not even touch it, come close to saying it, ask about it. I feel like it's not mine. But I don't hear it a lot. I don't know. I can't really answer because it's not really part of my experience.
Okay, that's fair. And like, I think you hit the nail on the head in a way there, and like, you feel like it's not yours. And I think that's what like all white people should understand. I don't get where the disconnect is there. Like, that seems so straightforward and obvious to me, but so many white people don't get that.
Yeah, or what I see more is white people maybe not using it, but being, self-righteous about, well, how come Black people get
Black
to say
people
it, but
can
I
use it. Yeah.
So white people, and again, we generalize. There's a lot of good white people out there, but we tend to try and make everything about us and how does it affect us. Not, I said last week, we struggle with empathy. So I think that's part of it. If white people think somebody else is getting away with something that they're not getting away with, they have trouble reconciling that in their minds. Even though we have access to everything already. So
yeah,
just one way to victimize themselves, I guess.
I'm glad you said all that, because that is, like, obviously you'll go next, but that's a perfect segue to my last question. So
okay.
that was a fitting response.
You might struggle with this question then. It's good timing for it. Question 5, last question for me this week. What is a positive attribute that maybe isn't unique to whites, but that is kind of prevalent with whites, a positive attribute that you can identify or
I think, yeah. I'm trying
something you respect about white people might be another way to put it.
Yeah. I need to be careful with this one. I love the question. Let me think. And I want, you may even have to cut some of the thinking time out, because I really want to think about this, because something came to my head that I don't really want to say, just because how it'll come out.
Go ahead. Yes, say however you want to, and then we'll figure out whether to keep it or not.
Yeah, my first thought, and it's honestly, it's okay if this ends up in the video too. Gosh, this will show how ingrained both, like, the positive parts of white culture and the negative parts of black culture are in, like, us in our society. The first thing that came to mind, and this is horrible because it's not true, is, like, their intelligence and their ability to, like, progress in school and take academics seriously and strive for, like, higher career goals, where I see a lot of black kids don't strive to, like, fulfill their potential in the way white people do. And, like, it's so deep. Like, it's not that black kids aren't as smart or they don't have the ability to be intelligent or that they don't want to, like, strive for the best futures.
So it's more of like an expectation.
Yeah, a lot of it's expectations. The communities they're in don't, like, value education enough. Don't have super stable home environments to where you have, like, the time or the benefit of, like, worrying about schooling. You're worrying about, like, keeping your lights on, and this is any, like, impoverished community, not just black kids, of course. But you're worried about keeping food on the table, keeping your, like, bills paid, things like that. And then academics fall by the wayside a little bit. A bunch of their role models are, like, musicians or sports players, so they're striving towards that rather than their role models being, like, scientists or thinkers or, like, whatever. And to be honest, I don't even know if that is really what you were looking for. Is that an example of what you were?
Yeah, that's good. And I think if I could offer what I think you're struggling with is you're not saying white people are more intelligent. You don't respect their intelligence. You respect that they value education and learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair.
For summarizing that a lot better than I could, because, like, it felt wrong coming out. Obviously, that's why I was, like, struggling with it so much, because, like, that part is true. They do, unfortunately, I hate this, but, like, value and, like, it's a stereotype, but kind of a true stereotype. I mean, we both work in urban schools. We see how they are. Right. Black people just do not value education as much as white people do, and I hate saying that. I absolutely hate saying that. But it is a very unfortunate fact. It's not our fault. It's not black people's fault that that's the case. It's our society's fault. So I don't blame us for it, but it is true.
Yeah, there's multitude of factors that go into that. Yeah. It's hard to put, you can't just put one thing on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all I was struggling so much with that. But with all that being said, and I hope people can tell that is not, like, where my head's at. Like you said, I don't think black people are less intelligent or less motivated. But yeah, the value for education is tremendous. I've had some very intense and interesting conversations with a Jewish friend of mine, and, like, their history. The history of Jews it's different from the history of blacks, and, like, you don't want to compare the horrific acts that have been enacted on any population, but right. They've had it bad, and, like, they've now made it to the top of society, and it took them thousands of years, literally. But Man, I asked them like how they do it. Like, you guys were slaves for a while too. And how did you like make it to now being very prosperous, like lawyers or banker? And I'm not trying to use like stereotypes, but he's like, Jews get into law a lot because they grew up valuing like education and their religion, and through their religion they're taught to read and interpret the Torah, right? Am I getting that right?
I think so. I'm not real familiar with Jewish culture.
I guess it's the Old Testament.
Yeah.
They're taught to interpret that a lot. So because of that, they figure out how to interpret different laws and stuff. And like, that's why a lot of Jewish people are lawyers, which I didn't know before he told me that. But yeah, I was like, how can Black people do the same thing? Like, I want us to be able to come from this like very low place and then like bring ourselves out of it. And yeah, his main things are the value of education. So that's really where and like my original answer to your original question comes from, is just like the value of education. And then like a strong sense of identity and community, which Black people don't have enough like unity. So like Jewish people unify around their religion in a lot of ways. A lot of Black people are Christian, but it's not our own religion. And and this almost goes back to your, what like country in Africa do I identify with the most? I don't know if we have anything aside from being Black that really identifies us or unifies us all. I know like back in the early 1900s, I believe, because Scarvey had the whole like Pan-African movement, came up with the Pan-African flag, which I actually have hanging on my wall. As a unifying symbol, because he's like, all other peoples have a flag that unifies them and Black people don't. So they came up with the Pan-African flag. So I guess it's seeing more like unity amongst us and a better sense of education. Again, sorry for the long-winded answer, but like that was a really good question. It made me think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and my last one, as I said, kind of related to your last answer. A lot of people get kind of defensive about like affirmative action hires or like admissions into schools. I'd assume a lot of those same people are the people screaming like all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. So do you think that type of thought process is more subconscious, or do you think those people are actively trying to keep like Black or any like subordinated population down?
No, that's a good point that I think it's important to make, in my experience anyway, is there's no like organized cabal that, you know, white people get together and come up with strategies to keep Blacks or other races down. It's pretty much selfishness. And not even in a negative, self-preservation may be a better way to put it. And even myself, when I got out of college, in a new state, I was trying to get a teaching job. And every time I was rejected, my assumption was it was affirmative action. It's kind of just a way to release frustration and scapegoat. And in truth, I was just upset that I didn't get the job. And after the fact, you find out affirmative action almost never had anything to do with it. You know, I'd look to see who got a job that I'd applied for, and it would be another white guy. And I'd be like, oh, it wasn't affirmative. So, and then as I aged, it's a tough subject, but it's really important. Even in the NFL, the Rooney Rule, letting Black coaches have an opportunity to interview for jobs. Not even guaranteeing that you have to provide jobs, but just getting them exposure, giving them a chance, so that they can showcase their talents in a way that white people have always been allowed to. Meets resistance, but I think those things it's hard to pull off because I'm also a middle child and fairness is kind of enmeshed in me. And so it's from the perspective of the majority, it's not fair, but it's never been fair for the minority. And again, it's trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Kind of as I've aged, I've just come to appreciate the need to give everyone a fair chance.
I know. It's a good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's up?